are committed, Madam Speaker, to achieving what we have been voted to power for. Change, growth, jobs, and genuine effective upliftment of the poor and underprivileged.
Promises made a year ago. But what about the delivery? The issues remain, and the concerns have become bigger. Inflation may be down, but so is industrial production. Financial inclusion may have begun, but drought-hit rural economy has no finance left.
Why don't you just open things up? Why have a very hardcore target on the fiscal deficit? People would say if India's time is now, open up.
The time is now, Mr. Arun Jaitley, to focus on rural growth, to focus on upliftment of all, and to get going the engines of the economy in full throttle. With the big mandate that the Modi government came to power with, the opportunity for bold decisions is now.
Joining Sandeep Gurumurti, Executive Editor of ET Now, and me on our pre-budget show, we have Nalin Kohli of the BJP, Pavan Verman of the JDU, the opposition voice, Raseish Shah, who's chairman of Edeilweiss. We have Rajiv Kumar, senior fellow of the CPR, and he's joining us from Delhi. Omkar Goswami, who's an economist and founder and chairperson of CERG, very respected voice on macroeconomics, has been with us on our budget panels over the years. And we have Raseish Shah of Edeilweiss and Sanjeev Sanyal, who is a leading financial economist. He's now joining us from Singapore. Thank you very much. Warm welcome to everyone. Let me just start with a couple of quick thoughts, and then Sandeep, you can take over. Bottom line is, now we're almost 1 year and 2/3 into the second year of the term of the Narendra Modi government. A lot has been promised. We need to talk about promise versus delivery. We need to talk about how much time the Modi government has to achieve what it set out to achieve. Whether it is achieving enough on important critical areas such as jobs, and whether beyond slogans, the government is beginning to now deliver. We need to look at what has been done and what needs to be done, and what the budget, the whole budgetary exercise in this year can really achieve. Is that how you look at it, Sandeep?
Absolutely, Arnab. 5 key points that this government said it will fix when it took charge: jobs, growth, bringing down prices, ease of doing business, and bring back black money. I guess if you look at it in an objective manner, not too much progress is made on some of these points, which is what we're going to debate over the next hour or so. Yeah,
absolutely. So let's start with promise versus delivery. And I open this up. We'll ask a couple of questions here, but feel free to come in. And, everyone can give their introductory points of view, but I'm not taking this around cyclically. I just want to start with Omkar Goswami on promise versus delivery. What was promised versus what has been delivered. Omkar Goswami, why don't you start, please?
Well, at one level, you can say it was a little bit of an over-promising. But having said that, and all over-promising often leads to under-delivery, but having said that, I'm going to just focus on 2 things which are pretty good for course. Whether you quibble about the GDP in numbers or not, the fact is that we are today at about 7% growth, give and take, a few points here and there. That's a very, very reasonable growth, because there is no other country that is of any size that has that growth rate. We are growing actually faster than China. So that growth is much better than before. Of course, we want more growth, but that growth is, I would say, in a very, very difficult world circumstances, in the world economic circumstances, a good delivery. Where I really do worry about, and Arnab, this needs to be debated, one is the fact that about 13 to 14 million people, minimum 12, young people are going to join the workforce every year. Minimum 12 million, more like 14 million. One quarter of them are not properly equipped, not properly literate. And I don't see any impetus in employment taking place in the economy. If anything, people are moving away from employing people to employing more capital, more machinery, and use lesser people per unit of output produced. That's a big worry that we should think about. And the second worry that we should think about is somehow manufacturing is not growing. It is just not growing. Manufacturing is quite employment intensive. especially in small manufacturing, and that just isn't taking off.
You know, if you look at the last couple of points which you made, which people will ask, what are people actually getting out of it? You talk about jobs and you talk about manufacturing not taking off, which also has an impact on jobs. So Nalin Kohli, add to that, you know, growing dissatisfaction among the people. You're going to have to answer some questions. In the run-up to the Delhi elections, I remember, for example, the Prime Minister clearly said, I am lucky, I'm a beneficiary of the falling crude oil prices. And he asked the people of Delhi to vote for him on that basis. Since the coming of the Modi government, global price of crude falls by 60%. From 106 per barrel to below 35 per barrel, 11-year low. Yet we haven't seen, people will ask you, Hamara achhe din kab aayenge? The consumer has not been, Nalin Kohli, the beneficiary of these falling prices. And yet the central government has been repeatedly increasing excise duty on diesel and petrol. So we are going to ask you here, you promised there as well, what have you delivered?
Well, of course, that question is a valid question to be asked, and I have no problems in answering it. Well, I heard also what Mr. Goswami's comments are, so we'll answer all of them together.
Sure.
Yes, we are the beneficiary of a falling crude oil price. It has helped a lot of things. One of them, it's also helped resurrect the companies, the oil companies, which were absolutely in the morass. It's helped get over some of the fiscal issues that we had, which were highly critical. So when we say there is a promise, that's a statement of intent, as a budget is. It's not only an accounting exercise, it's also a direction. It's an intent of where we tend to take it. And therefore, a budgetary exercise is seen over multiple budgets. Now, how successful or how much we failed is something that there will be a final moment when we'll be judged, which is going to be when we go to the hustings in 2019. So let's get specific. The question of jobs were there. So let's come to jobs. Is the organized sector the critical sector that provides all the jobs in India? No. The unorganized sector, small and marginal self-employed, is a huge sector of employability and employment. Now, one research I was checking seems to indicate that probably in the organized sector, the total number of jobs is plus or minus, something like about 14 or 15 million, as compared to what we talk about, say, maybe 4 crores or 5 crores in the unorganized sector or in the small. So you have a Mudra Bank issue where you've got about 1 lakh crores being distributed to small and marginal people who have very small financial
Nalin Kohli, just to interrupt you, we'll come to the jobs. Nalin Kohli, just to interrupt you, we'll come to jobs in a bit, but I want you to answer the question.
The workforce. They are not getting jobs, irrespective of which sector you talk about. Why are you obfuscating things between...
Mr. Goswami, we are on the same page in terms of the point you're making.
Organized and unorganized. 13 million to 14 million people are entering the workforce. They are not getting jobs. They ought to get jobs. That is not necessarily a critique of your government, but it is certainly something that your government must urgently look into.
Not. Of course, I'm adding to the point, and I think you have incorrectly, with due respect and in humility, perhaps thought that I'm making an attack on you. I'm not. I'm merely saying we are the ones who also in 2014 in our election have pointed to this critical reality of how many people are joining the workforce. So, I mean, you don't need to preach to the converted. It's a statement of reality. I'm merely pointing that in both senses, when you talk about or we talk of the budget, I feel personally that we tend to look at it only in terms of the organized sector, and we tend to look at it from tax reforms which may benefit, say, I'm trying to expand that discussion to the entire thing.
No, you're being very narrow focused on that. I'm surprised that Pavan Verma is giving you so much space in the course of the discussion. If this kind of patience were to be reflected on the news hour every night, I'd appreciate it. The point is this. The point is this.
Going to have a critique of
point. I'm talking. You did. By the way, I place on record that you avoided my question on when the Aam Aadmi will be the beneficiary of the fall in crude prices. You deftly avoided that question.
Oh, I'll answer you the Achhe Din.
You deftly avoided it.
I'll answer you on the record. Because
no, you deftly avoided it. Rajiv Kumar's hand goes up.
Achhe Din is a process. It's Achhe Din for those who don't have to make big ticket corruption payments as it used to happen in the previous government.
Achhe Din promise. Achhe Din promise was yours. I'm not trying to pin you down.
What about the 20
I'm not trying to pin you down. Nalin Kohli.
Is that not Achhe Din for those who are financially included? Of course. I mean, Achhe Din, that's why I said it's relative.
Nalin Kohli, I'd get Pavan Verma in it. Achhe Din is for the people. I'm giving one more statistic.
62 lakh LPG connections to the marginal.
I know you have got your, your fact sheet ready. Let me give you my fact sheet. 2014 BJP Lok Sabha manifesto. Party commits its highest priority to agricultural growth, increase in farmers' income and rural development. Where is that? Contrast this. No, allow me to complete. Now you're heckling
things
me.
that I should say.
Now you're heckling me. I'm completing the point and giving it to Pavan Verma. Contrast these to the promises of agricultural stress pulsated on the ground that has resulted in a major decline in agricultural output this year. You see, I am looking at the BJP's manifesto and the situation
including the agricultural
for 2 years. Agriculture is stressed. It is stressed. Every statistic says so. Pavan Verma, please.
So may I just answer that?
No. Pavan Verma, please. Counter narrative. Counter narrative.
Let me make
counter
my point, then
from Pavan
Nalin can answer me.
Yeah.
Arnab, the fact of the matter is that there is a yawning gulf between promise and delivery. Now, as far as the broad parameters of the economy go, which both you and Sandeep touched upon, the growth rate, and that is contested incidentally, could be high, but we have to look at the content of it. The fact of the matter is that industrial production is contracting. Exports have fallen consecutively for 14 months and are now down by 13.2%. The rupee is about to touch 70. Agriculture, which you just mentioned, in 2014-15 grew by minus 0.2% and is currently hovering around 1.1%. There is a whole problem of the NPAs. And I believe that in spite of the crude prices falling, which was a favorable climate, the benefits have not been passed on to the consumer. So I want to make the two very critical points. Who are the Achhe Din for? Half the farming population is under a per capita debt Arnab of 47,000 rupees per person.
Yeah.
Let me say to you that there have been 124 suicides in Maharashtra only this year. Every half an hour, a farmer is committing suicide. The spend on agriculture, I want Nalin to answer this. The spend on agriculture, which still accounts for 50% or 58% of the population, has actually declined from 36,000 crores in 2005 to less than 27,000 crores in 2015. I'll give you one example, Arnab. 5,300 crores have been given for the crucial area of irrigation, and 100,000 crores are being planned for a bullet train, which nobody knows who's going to use between Mumbai and
What priorities, Nalin Kohli?
What priorities are these?
What
priorities? What kind of jobs?
Do we have a counter to Pavan Verma from any of our other panels?
No job creation.
No, do any of our other panels?
Yes, I would like...
Quite easy.
My question to the panel is Nalin Kohli going to be absolutely defenseless tonight? Does everybody disagree with Nalin Kohli?
No, I think...
Is there anyone who will speak for Nalin Kohli?
No, I would like to answer this.
I saw Raseish and Sanjeev Sanyal's hands go up.
Yes, I would like to argue on this. See, I think...
Nalin, listen. There are still some people who might give you some, a little bit of a ringside defense. Enjoy that, please. Did I see whose hand go up? Rajiv Verma, Sanjeev Sanyal, who's going in?
And also social sector.
All hands go up. One second, Raseish Shah.
Health and education.
Okay, Rajiv Kumar now, and then after that, Rajiv Kumar first. Rajiv Kumar.
Arnab, I don't know why Nalin hasn't mentioned at all that for the first time in 10 years, your wholesale price index is negative territory. Your consumer prices are now not rising as fast as they were all through the UPA government.
Professor Kumar, how much credit for that would you give to the government? How much credit for that would you give to the government? Professor Rajiv Kumar, how much credit for that would you give to the government?
Just a second. The fact is that you would have to give the government the credit that they haven't splurged money unnecessarily as some of the previous governments did, and they have got a government which is working. They have inherited a huge negative legacy which can't be just wished away. Mr. Pavan Verma talked about a decline in agricultural spending from 36 to 27,000 crores. All of that happened during UPA's time. They inherited a broken government. The fact therefore remains that this is a work in progress.
I'm not saying the UPA would have done better. I'm saying this government hasn't delivered.
The point remains that any cause of complacency that I notice very often, much less arrogance, which I also notice sometimes, is completely unwarranted. But the fact is that this government in less than 2 years has brought back some of the governance that was not there.
If I were to, Rajiv Kumar, no, Rajiv Kumar, no, let's get everybody a turn, please. Let's get everybody a turn. Raseish Shah and and Sanjeev Sanyal, who are not known to be very reticent people, have been very reticent so far. Let's give them an opportunity on the program at least. My point is, and if I can put my 2 bit on this, if I can put my 2 bit on this, I think this government is having a terrific time. It's got a fantastic tailwind. The BJP Lok Sabha manifesto blamed the UPA for the overall inflationary trend during their tenure at the centre. Will the BJP representative Raseish, Sanjeev, should he concede squarely that I am the beneficiary of lower inflation because of the global fall in crude oil prices? Not because I'm the beneficiary of my own policy?
No, I think...
No, okay, who's going? Sanjeev. Sanjeev. Sanjeev and then Raseish.
I'll go first. I think the point here is very simple.
Okay,
if you're going to talk about the government benefiting... if you're going to talk about the government benefiting from lower oil prices, you've also got to allow for the fact that you've had 2 drought years. So you're dealing really here with external shocks to the system. You cannot take one and not the other. Now, the government has done well on a few areas. First of all, I think it is finally beginning to clean up the banks. Of course, there is a danger that recognizing the NPAs may gridlock the banking system. So other things need to be done. But I think finally recognizing that there is a problem with the banking system itself is one major step forward. Secondly, from what I hear, there hasn't at least so far been a major higher levels of the government. That itself, again, restoring some degree of order and governance to the system is, again, I think at least a major achievement. However, I think there are several areas where the business about good governance is not being pushed. So there is, for example, the GST. The claim is that it is being stalled in Parliament because of the Rajya Sabha. The opposition is not letting it go through. But what about direct taxes? Direct taxes is entirely in the hands of the government. It can push it through as a money bill in the budget. So I'm hoping that they will actually begin to move on direct taxes. In fact, the direct taxes system in India is even worse than the indirect tax system.
Agreed.
And of course, there are a bunch of other things. I mean, what about the legal system?
No, but what about
no move on the legal reforms?
No, but what about the basic promise? Let's get Sanjeev. Sanjeev, let's get Raseish in. We're being very unfair to Raseish. Let him speak in on this. But my point is, Raseish, if I can get you in by just you want to make an independent point. Actually let's get Raseish to jump into the debate, and then I'll ask you a question. Yes, Raseish.
Yeah, actually, Arnab, I just wanted to add that if the government has had some tailwinds, they also have a lot of headwinds. So we have to see this in balance. And I think the largest stress currently is in the rural sector. And I do hope that the government addresses that, because a large part of India is still out there. And I think because of the drought, because of the fall in agriculture prices, we are seeing a huge amount of stress out there. And along with that, we are also seeing a significant global slowdown and overcapacity in the world, which is just going to make it hard to invest in fresh capacity building as we go along. So we have to recognize it, and I do feel that it is high time government start the investment, whether it is through railways, whether it is through infrastructure. But government has done a great job on the road sector, and they just go forward on that.
Yeah, Raseish, but if the government has done such a splendid job over the last 18 months, I have a simple question. Why is it that for 4 quarters in a row, corporate earnings have declined? Why is it that markets are so nervous going into this budget? And you'd agree that much of it is the government's doing as well. Its talk on taxation, the way it is again brought back the ghost of Vodafone.
Precisely.
I mean, surely the government has spoiled the
precisely.
climate.
Since we are talking about delivery versus promise, let's go to the issue squarely. Let's ask the government today. The government says that retrospective taxes are a thing of the past. You talk about boosting sentiment. But the revival of the Vodafone retrospective taxation case only dents the government's credibility, proves to be a major setback to revive sentiment. Why did the government do that? Was that the promise? So Nalin, you are really on the back foot today, and I'll tell you why. Because you haven't delivered to agriculture. You haven't delivered to Aam Aadmi.
Not at all.
You have not delivered to corporates. And you have tailwinds working for you.
Yeah, that's true.
You understand what I'm saying?
And headwinds. As Raseish Bhai just said.
I don't know about headwinds.
Okay,
Nalin is batting again.
To anybody.
Nalin is back to back.
Back to back. Just a quick fact.
Nalin is back to back.
I didn't want to be rude because everyone had to put their points across.
I'm sorry.
Now, Rajiv Bhai first to say that I wasn't forgetting any of the points.
Senior Goswami, not the junior Goswami.
I didn't have an opportunity to
pick on that. That is the senior Goswami interrupting you. I have a line of deniability against the senior Goswami.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just putting a fact on the table. Which is
no, we aren't. Even I'm not. Please.
This government this year, this government, because of the fall in crude oil prices, every crude oil price being marked with an increase in excise duty, i.e. not passing it on to the consumer, this government has earned an extra 17,000 crores of revenue, as said by Mr. Hasmukh Adhia, Revenue Secretary, only on increased excise duties on the fall in petroleum prices. So the consumer got nothing, the government has got a lot.
Okay, this is going to take a few moments, but I'm going to answer all of them and come to the senior Mr. Goswami's question last. May I? And I'm going to bat really fast.
Yeah.
I'm going to bat really fast, otherwise you'll think I'm taking too much time. So let's go one by one. What did we inherit? Low growth rate, high inflation rate, high interest rates. Not even midway in our economy, or in terms of our term, we are already moving towards low interest rates, high growth rate, and low inflation rate, which is what Rajiv Bhai was speaking about. So you're talking about headwinds, tailwinds, accepted point. You say the farm structure is in problem. Of course it's in problem. That's why you need a crop insurance scheme, launched 3 days ago. That's why you need to start working towards social security, because distress in the rural India is equally bad. So you have a social security scheme, you have financial security scheme, you have a pension scheme. Those numbers are staggering. They are absolutely staggering, nowhere seen in the world ever. You're talking of 20 crore accounts. You're talking of direct benefit reaching about 15 crore people. You're talking about LPG now reaching to those because society is joining.
Nalin Kohli, the point that you made, about...
Now, let's go to infrastructure. Let me just finish. Let me.
Nalin, let's debate the first 3 points that you made on high growth. I think your contention on high growth itself...
No, let me just finish.
Okay, please finish.
Let me finish. Yes, there is a demand for public spending. The government must spend. When Mr. Goswami, as in the senior Goswami, says that you've gained 17,000 crores, let's not forget, how are we going to bring into infrastructure? Just now, Raseish Bhai mentioned about roads. So what has happened about roads? 2 kilometers to 25 kilometers a day. You want railways to spend when railways operating ratio is pathetic. So railways is working at additional revenues, brought it up to 7 kilometers of tracks laid on a daily basis. Work is happening. It's work in progress.
Yeah,
obviously, we will be held accountable for what we have done or not done.
One second. You are falling prey. You are falling prey to the cardinal sins that party spokespersons, they fall prey to every day, which is not answer the question. You refuse to answer the question on why people are not benefiting on crude. I accepted that. You refused to answer the question on agricultural distress. I accepted that. You refused to answer the question on tailwinds. I accepted that. You refused to answer the question on retrospective taxation. I accepted that. But now you are giving a speech.
I'm sorry, my case is so weak that you
are not answering my questions, and you have a counter from Pavan Verma. Pavan Verma, Rajiv want to counter you.
I'll answer both your questions first, Mr.
Pavan Verma is countering you. Sorry. Pavan is countering you.
Let me just come in quickly.
Because he has a problem of high ban expectation in his state.
Pavan Verma.
Let me just come, Nalin. Let's not make this very subjective. You see, there is an Urdu saying, na khuda hi mila na visale se nam. Neither God did you get nor the beloved.
Is that objective?
Here is a situation where the corporate sector, and if you talk to them privately, they are all cribbing. They are saying the stock market is at levels below what it was before this government came to power. The bank system is in complete disarray. There is the ease of doing business. We may have gained positions from 142 to 130, but it's far from what the expectations were. And there is tax terrorism, as you just spoke about in terms of retrospective taxation. So the corporate sector is not happy. On the other hand, the vast majority of this country, the poor and the marginalized, are today in a situation where in the elitist vision of this government, they don't figure at all. I gave you an example of what is being spent on irrigation versus
Pavan Verma, you spoke about that. Pavan Verma, you spoke about that. But there's one point that Nalin made. I want to throw it to the Economist in the panel. Pavan Verma, just to interrupt you, Nalin Kohli said, just to interrupt you.
Raseish wants to counter. Raseish is countering. Raseish Shah countering. 1 second. Raseish Shah is coming in versus you, Pavan Verma. Pavan Verma, Raseish Shah is not a politician, must be allowed to speak.
Social bank accounts. This is not elitist.
let's not make this an elitist debate. I have a simple question. Once, Nalin Kohli said that we are a high-growth economy. Sanjeev Sanyal, Rajiv Kumar, Dr. Omkar Goswami, do you buy the 7.6% growth? I mean, isn't it the biggest joke when we say that we are a high-growth economy growing at 7.6%? Is there anyone on the panel who believes we are growing at 7.6% in the first place? Sanjeev Sanyal?
No, maybe we are not growing at 7.6%.
You need agricultural growth at 4%.
There are statistical problems. But the growth rate is pretty high, and it's possibly the highest in the world. By any indication, India is currently growing faster than China and is the fastest growing major economy in the world. Whether it's, but the fact of the matter is, I think I have a serious issue here with what Mr. Verma was saying. You see, the problem is the litany of woes that he put together. Those are the same ones that would have been given 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's the same sort of criticism. The point is, this sort of opposition,
this government
which does not look at specific issues or makes a generic opposition, that doesn't take us anywhere. The fact is, the government definitely has not delivered on several issues. Let us focus on those issues. They relate largely to the issue of not having a minimum government, maximum governance, which was the problems, which is that major changes have not happened in areas where, in fact, there should be a withdrawal of government. Surely that was part of the promise of the government, that there are somewhere it will go in, but there are places where it will withdraw, and that, in fact, has not happened. We have not seen privatization in any serious way. We have not seen any major simplification of the tax system, which I mentioned earlier. I think there is a serious issue here relating to these administrative and other reforms that need to be done. Simply generically saying,
I want to take this up.
Sanjeev, if I may just come in on that. Omkar, I'm just coming to you. Omkar, I'm just coming to you. I just want to get Raseish and Rajiv and then open this up for discussion. I want to put in a broad paradigm now. See, 1 year and 7 months of this government is up. And as we very well know, the last 1.5 years of any government is a countdown to the next general election. And we have 5 state elections this year. Then there are elections in Uttar Pradesh and Gujarat next year, which are extremely significant. So large time and attention bandwidth of this government will be on political issues this year and even more so in 2017, because the run-up to 2019 will start. So if major things have not happened when you had 281 seats with you, you have over 320 people backing you in the Lok Sabha, irrespective of what is happening in the Rajya Sabha. Now people will ask, get on to business. And I think, Raseish and Rajiv, the biggest business is creating jobs. If jobs are not created and created quickly, then the government will not be able to run through rough weather. One of the major objectives of this government, Raseish, was boost employment through skill generation. Government reports state that 119 million additional skilled workers will be required in 24 sectors by 2022. You set yourself a target on that. But my question is to the workers who are skilled and yet unemployed. As per a report of the Labour Bureau, rate of unemployment among those who got formal training from ITIs is a worrying 14.5%, which means you have a huge number, hundreds of thousands of skilled unemployed into your system. So your systems are not matching. You're talking of Skill India, but you have no employability for these people. What is the government going to address that, and do they have the time to do anything in that respect, Raseish, in the budget and after this?
And absolutely, I think the one area where we have still fallen behind and we are falling behind is on the area of jobs. And in fact, in jobs, we are seeing that we don't even have any estimates. We don't have any assessment of how many jobs are getting created. We're getting FDI, we're getting all this Make in India, we're getting all of that. But the first thing we need to do is to set up a system by which we can at least get an estimate of how many jobs are getting created. And we should remember that we are in the world where there is a huge amount of overcapacity. We are in the world where there are returns on any investment are very low. We are in a world where real interest rates in India are very high. And in the middle of this, if you have to create jobs, you need extraordinary focus. And that's why I think through railways and the FDI and defense whatever hook and crook that we can do, the government should increase spending to create jobs.
Rajiv Kumar, so what can the government do to create more jobs? Rajiv Kumar, this is coming your way. Rajiv Kumar, what can the government do in this budget? Let's get specific. In this budget, what can the government do to create more jobs?
Arnab, what the government can do is to build further on its startup program. That's a very good program where jobs will be created. Second, the government should and must do a huge program of low-cost housing, which will have a huge multiplier effect and will generate the jobs that you need. Third, the government must invest much more on higher education, vocational and skills that you have to do. But I think what's happening is that the government has laid the foundation for not ceding the ground of inclusion to the opposition by opening the Jan Dhan accounts, by directing the subsidies directly to the bank accounts, by opening up the life insurance and insurance policies. The government, what it has done, it has covered the waterfront on not being called elitist, and now they can use that basis to generate much more investment and jobs in railways, in roads, in infrastructure, and I said in housing, but much more, and this is where I will end, the government must invest a huge amount in public irrigation at the moment and in rural assets. Because that is where the jobs will come and the rural distress will disappear.
So what would the government be waiting for, Omkar? What would the government be waiting for?
So Arnab, just give me a minute.
Omkar Goswami.
Hang on. No, hang on. Just give me a minute. Here's the situation. Which are the sectors and activities that give maximum incremental jobs? Number one is infrastructure, be it in making roads, be it in railways, be it in making buildings, tourism, housing projects, housing. Yeah, infrastructure is a very large area outside of agriculture for creating jobs. Now, the fact of the matter is that despite an increase in the amount of miles on highways completed per day, the whole system of infrastructure, i.e. the construction companies, are in such a bad shape that very little of real infrastructure work is taking place, barring perhaps highways. Very little. So there's very little of incremental construction taking place. There's very little of work on public irrigation. There's very little work on waterway systems. All these create large number of jobs. The issue is not about how much more I'm going to put in the budget. The issue is how to ensure that what I put in the budget goes to where it goes, because it doesn't. Because I can bet you that by the end of this year, on the 29th, you will find that large amounts of money have been taken away from the capital account, which is meant to do exactly this in order to get the budget to the number that they want.
Is there a consensus on this panel? Can I just...
I hope not,
because you're all very eminent minds.
Rajiv, you saw it last year when capital expenditures were cut.
Omkar, I'm convinced that this government, this budget will not have a cut in capital expenditure, because if it does, they will be committing harakiri.
Is there a consensus on this panel? Can I just...
I hope not,
because you're all very eminent minds.
Rajiv, you saw it last year. Rajiv, you saw it last year. You saw it through last three UPA budgets. You saw it last year when capital expenditures were cut dramatically over the last 2 months of the fiscal in order to meet that target.
I am convinced... Omkar, I'm convinced that this budget will not have a cut in capital expenditure, because if it does, they will be committing harakiri. They'll be committing harakiri.
Yes, Raseish.
And so I think there will be an increase in public expenditure.
Rajiv, there's one important point here.
They will announce some large capital expenditure projects.
Okay, we are going to come to that issue about whether the government has the headroom to have that kind of increase in public expenditure, which they should, because a lot of people feel if it's our bright time, let's spend our way to growth. But I'm sorry, if I've heard the Economist correctly, you hear Raghuram Rajan and all the people who are giving solicited and unsolicited advice to the Finance Ministry, they're extremely cautious. They say we want to do 3.6, not 3.9, almost as if they were school students getting a 10 on 10 if they achieve 3.7 and 3.8 as the fiscal deficit target. Is that the way to look at it? No, is that the way to look at it? I think Raseish wanted to come in. Raseish, if the creation... Raseish, let me put this to you. If you were in the finance ministry today, and you had a choice, Raseish, between creating hundreds of thousands of jobs, but loosening up on the fiscal deficit targets a bit, you have the money, but loosening up a bit, getting a little bit of flack, and knowing that the pink papers may not give you a 9 on 10 the next morning, would you take that risk? I'd say the time to take that risk is now. Would you take that risk?
I would agree with you, but I think the government can do both. The finance minister has to spend. I think it is the first priority. But for that, he has to raise resources by selling assets. The government has to sell assets. They can't say the prices are low, because if you are selling it at low prices, you're also investing into new assets at these prices.
Now let us go to the politics of it. And here's the question. Okay. Nalin Kohli and Pavan Verman. The idea is not to get you into a boxing bout on this one. But to Nalin Kohli, my simple question is, Mr. Kohli, you can't blame the Rajya Sabha for everything. Right? Tomorrow it will be a little warmer in Delhi. You can't say the Rajya Sabha decided it would be warmer. We wanted the temperatures to be more temperate. Similarly, you have jobs. Look at the job situation. 78% of India's households have no wage or salary earning member. 17% of households have a wage or salary earning member. 46% of households, they have only one worker. The situation on jobs is really bad. Everyone's telling you, please unleash your assets. Either you disinvest to create capital for yourself. Don't complain. OROP is not the reason that you're going to have a problem with the fiscal deficit. There are many other reasons. So Nalin Kohli, become bold. Take bold decisions. Don't get hamstrung by what's happening in Parliament. Break out of the cycle, Nalin Kohli, but do you have the courage to do that? Have you yourself got trapped into a cycle of your own making? If you don't have the confidence to break out of it, you can say so. But don't blame Pavan Verman.
That's a good point.
You can't blame Pavan Verman for it. Yes, good Nalin Kohli and then Pavan Verman.
There were two reasons I was quiet so long. One is I genuinely don't like to interrupt people. And the second part was a lot of points that everyone was speaking on the panel. I could actually genuinely see that they were commenting about what the government is doing. I can, for the next 5 minutes, point out whether you're talking waterways, you're talking roads, you're talking ABC. A lot of them the government is already working on. But yes, if you're talking of expansion of work in terms of, say, construction companies, infrastructure, they were all in a distressed situation. Whether it's national roads or anything, you had to move them out of that zone of distress in terms of how it was tangled to get them perform. Obviously, expansion would be the next part to it. And the government does understand it. Mr. Jaitley has spoken about it on a few times, that we need to also look at spending towards it. Now let's come to the Rajya Sabha question. So I could see no disagreement with what the panelists were saying. And I think the government is working to it. If we get into a detailed discussion, I'm happy to speak on it. Now let's come to Mr. Pavan Verman. What Pavan Bhai is saying, first, I will excuse myself. I can't be as objective like him and quote an Urdu couplet. Sadly, I'm not that learned as him. But with regards to the point of politics of the Rajya Sabha, a lot of things that can be done is being done outside the Rajya Sabha, which is in the executive domain. It does not require legislative changes. With regard to Rajya Sabha, I'm optimistic because work has been transacted barring the last two sessions, which was the monsoon and the winter session.
No, but GST is
whether
permanently
it will be disrupted
stuck
any further, that's...
Nalin Bhai, can I ask you a question?
I'm coming to that. I know that's the question.
Nalin Bhai, can I ask you a question?
No, Nalin Kohli, you're getting counters. Pavan Verman.
Nalin Bhai, just 1 second.
Pavan Verman.
No, Nalin Bhai, why isn't the government being bold and out of the box, as Arnab is asking? Why is the bang missing?
Yeah, why aren't you being bold? Nalin Kohli, you're also getting a counter from Pavan Verman. Pavan Verman, please. Yeah, go on.
Yes, I want to make a point here to Nalin. Arnab, I want to say on record on your channel that it's my considered view that this government is not keen on the GST bill. I'll give you 3 or 4 reasons for it. First of all, any government that was interested in legislative business would by now, if they were that interested, have set up a structured forum for a sustained dialogue to find a solution which is easily negotiable on the 3 points of difference. I can say to you with honesty, the opposition has not yet seen that outreach in any structured way except a tokenistic meeting over a cup of tea called irregularly in order to create an impression. Secondly, I think the government is feeling that the concrete dividends of GST will take 2 or 3 years to kick in. And so by then we are on the verge of 2019, and it may also lead to higher service tax. So it's best to leave the GST and use it as an alibi to blame the opposition for everything that goes on.
You are saying this is a government conspiracy.
It's a great...
You're saying it's a government conspiracy. It's interesting.
I'm saying to you.
This is a government conspiracy. Fine. This is the new one.
Like that.
Yes.
And every time before Parliament, there is an inflammatory issue which is unleashed.
Oh, then in which case...
So that the legislative business would be then disrupted. And I really wonder how a government which is keen on a legislation...
This is a very major charge.
The Congress
No. This is a very major charge. It can't go unrebutted. This is a charge of conspiracy. The government has been accused by Pavan Verma of conspiring not to pass GST. Any special comments, koi vishesh tippani from any of our other guests? Raseish Shah, Sanjeev Sanyal, I saw both of you smile when Pavan Verma said that. No, 1 second. Raseish Shah and Sanjeev Sanyal, why were you both
smiling? The fact of the matter is that...
Sanjeev Sanyal.
Yeah, I think Yes, I would like to speak on this. I think you have a situation where Mr. Verma is sounding very, very pious. So let's say there are these inflammatory things being done. Why are they getting inflamed? After all, if they are so keen and the government is the one that is getting in the way, why don't they
Pavan Verma, why are you so highly inflammable?
I'll answer that.
Why are you highly inflammable? Yes.
I'll tell you. I'm not inflammable. I'm not inflammable, but I believe, Arnab, and I say this with conviction, Parliament is not a forum to blindly rubber stamp the legislative business of the government when there are other issues on which the government also has to face accountability.
Okay, I think Nalin wants to counter.
There are other issues. So therefore, that is the problem.
Okay, there are counters from Nalin Kohli.
May I?
There are issues.
I have three
but the GST
short
could have been
sentences to
negotiated
make.
in between
One is,
the two sessions.
For any discussion,
between the two sessions.
For any, Pavan Bhai, may I, Pavan Bhai?
Can I just...
So, with regard to functioning of Parliament, no, that's okay. With regard to functioning of Parliament, anything and everything can be discussed within the way, if it's the will of Parliament, provided Parliament functions. You can't, literally run with the hounds and hunt with the, hunt with the hounds and run with the hares and say that, no, Parliament doesn't function, it's the primary responsibility of government. So what happens to the responsibility of Indians who elect other Indians to serve them in Parliament and they are not in government? Do they walk away from their responsibility? That's not there. Now on the conspiracy theory, I'd just say it's my considered view, to paraphrase Pavan Bhai, that Pavan Bhai is an accomplished author, and he's certainly writing a new novel.
Okay.
Nalin, you've conveniently not answered the question that Arnab asked and that Rajiv Kumar asked as well, which is why is the government not using this opportunity to take bold decisions?
Tell me.
Please answer that question. Why is the government not putting its 281 seats to use? Why is the government not using its political capital? Why is it not taking the bold decision that all our panelists expect this government to take?
Why aren't you? Please explain why you become, so shy of taking any bold steps.
This is reminding us of the UP.
I don't agree.
This is like you're being goaded and pushed by people who say it.
No, I don't.
Why are you so routine?
I'll tell you why. Because there are some there are bold measures. But yes, I mean, as I said it, we spoke a short while ago. I think it was probably Mr. Raseish Shah who said, it's not easy to think about ensuring financial inclusion for 200 million people. It was bold, it was fast. We are talking about infrastructure. We understand the NPAs. You are saying about accounting of the government.
Okay.
Was there ever even a movement towards looking at the actual problem of NPAs, how deep it is, and how much is the problem?
On NPAs, you're opening up... One second. How do you... Okay, so then you announce a 4-year roadmap. One second. We're extending the debate by 5 minutes. Your finance ministry announces a 4-year roadmap to introduce 70,000 crore rupees to recapitalize ailing public sector banks under a bad loan crisis. Right? With NPAs are hitting 380,000+ crore rupees. How does the government plan, Raseish Shah? Can the government, this is your area, plan to maintain enough fiscal space to infuse additional income into these sick PSU banks and at the same time spur economic growth via public spending? I mean, how are you going to manage both?
And how long will it throw good money chasing bad money?
And how can you choke good money chasing bad? Okay, who wants to take that?
The answer is you can't.
The answer is you can't, says Omkar Goswami.
You cannot have three things.
So
you cannot recapitalize fully or even 50% or even 30% of all the public sector banks' NPAs. You cannot pay the OROP that is due, and you cannot pay the pay commission amounts that are due in 1 year. And in addition to all of that, in a world where you're possibly looking at $50 for crude, in a world of that, to also have additional expenditure, even if you were to increase the fiscal deficit.
Should the finance minister slacken this fiscal consolidation roadmap a little bit? Slacken it a little bit and make funds for public investment.
Arnab, I think all equity investors are asking the finance minister to spend more, to loosen the fiscal consolidation target and go ahead and spend.
I say to Raseish Shah, we are back on the issue of priorities. Should the finance minister, slacken this fiscal consolidation roadmap a little bit, slacken it a little bit, and make funds for public investment?
Arnab,
make funds available for public investment.
Arnab, if you ask me as an equity investor, I would agree with you.
See, Arnab, the most important thing here is that you have to lower the cost of capital. The cost of capital is just too high.
Yes, Raseish.
I think if you ask me as an equity investor, I think all equity investors are asking the finance minister to spend more, to loosen the fiscal consolidation target and go ahead and spend. But if you ask the bond markets and the credit rating agencies, they are very hell-bent on ensuring that the government sticks to the fiscal consolidation target. So I think, if you ask me, I would rather loosen the target, which will make the equity investors happy, but also be cognizant of the fact that it will make the bond market investors very unhappy.
Omkar, can we afford to do that? Omkar Goswami, do you agree with that view?
Well, I have a very straightforward answer. I have a very straightforward answer, which is this.
Let Omkar Goswami come in, please.
Arnab, hi.
Just a simple 30-second answer. In the last 25 years,
2 points here.
I have never seen a widening of fiscal deficit, say from 3.9 to say 4.2% of GDP, while all very good in theory and very Keynesian in theory, actually goes to what it is meant for. All I have seen for widening fiscal deficit is lazy bureaucracy and wastage of money.
Right. Okay. Now, gentlemen, we're going to close this. I just want to understand from you.
Arnab, here, just
okay, Rajiv Kumar. Okay, Rajiv Kumar. Then we're closing after that. Yeah.
You know, I just want to offer an example of the banking sector. The government cannot find fiscal space or money for it, but what they could do is to consolidate the public sector banks and convert them into 5 or 6 very large banks, which will then be much better off to, raise money in the market and will not require any legislation to lower the government ownership below 51%. Now, why isn't the government trying to do a bold step like that is the question that I asked Mr. Nalin and the government.
Well, I think we're coming to the close of this chat.
I've heard that argument. Actually, I've heard that also about the merger of banks.
Nalin, in a broad way, the word we are hearing again and again and again is bold. I think this word has been repeated 100 times by our 6 panelists today. Be bold.
Not 100.
Be bold, Nalin. Your time won't stay with
direction.
you. Pardon me?
Yeah, but in the right direction.
Be bold in the right direction.
But in the right direction, Arnab.
Yeah, maybe not in the Rajya Sabha, but
at least I'll take the good thing from that comment. I'll thank the panelists, whoever said in the right direction, that at least there's an acknowledgement that we are in the right direction and not in the wrong direction as a nation were perhaps. Anyway, I think, yes, we've heard that argument about the Big Bang process, reform, and this has been something.
I was just saying
this has been something that's been in the debate for the last 2 years.
Who was bold as a finance minister, the last person who was bold as a finance minister from your party was Jaswant Singh. So perhaps the present incumbent may learn a few things from him, if he can.
Absolutely.
I think the contexts are different. And I can say this with a great amount of responsibility and, conviction that when Mr. Jaswant Singh was finance minister, we were nowhere close to the situation we were when Mr. Arun Jaitley inherited the finance ministry.
Okay. Do a SWOT analysis. All opportunities are not lost. The threat persists. Understand your strengths. Be aware of your weaknesses. And don't blame everything on the Rajya Sabha. I thank you very much for joining me on this pre-budget chat. Really enjoyed it from Sandeep and me. Thank you so much. Thank you.